Welcome back to America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula and America's Medicare Associates with Nolan Baker and Scott Kirshner. 419-794-3030 is the phone number. 419-794-3030. Always online, americasretirementheadquarters.com. If you missed the previous parts of the show or previous editions of the show, you want to catch up, you can always search for it on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you consume your media. Just search for America's Retirement Headquarters. All those previous shows up there for you on demand. Now, guys, November is National Long-Term Care Awareness Month. So besides spreading the word about nursing home abuse and neglect, this month also encourages adults to put a care plan in place for their future, something that I think a lot of people don't really think about until it's thrust upon them. So many retirees are probably asking, how do I prepare for long-term care expenses? What do you want to tell them?
Well, first of all, I'd say there are, a lot of great organizations here in town. And of course, there's a couple of them that, you fall into the home abuse and neglect. I got to say personally, I had my mom pass away from pancreatic cancer, and she was at hospice in Northwest Ohio, and I consider those people angels on earth. They, were just absolutely fantastic. It's a big topic. It's one of those topics that I think a lot of people don't want to talk about when you're looking at how do I prepare for long-term care expenses. It's, we never want to get older, and we never want to think about, what that could look like. But the good news is if you check it off the list now, kind of like what we were just talking about on our other show segment, is by getting it taken care of now, there can be a lot better choices, a lot more choices, and it can not be as a stressful situation by waiting till a crisis situation. When you look at it, there's really 5 different choices. Number one is you could self-insure. There's, it's kind of what a coin toss whether somebody's going to end up needing long-term medical care in their lifetime. And self-insure, if they build up a nest egg, they could obviously pay for that out of their pocket. Now, Scott, though, the challenge is if you look at it with healthcare costs continuing to spiral out of control, even self-insuring can, deteriorate somebody's assets pretty quick.
There's no question. I think one of the most important things to do is to understand the different levels of care. You have your intermediate care, you have your assisted living care, you have your memory care, and then you have your full-blown long-term care where they need all of the services that the facility offers. I'm very, very familiar with this because I've been going through this a lot. If you understand those different levels, each one of them come with a different amount of expense. For example, if you're looking at assisted care, basically what they're going to do with assisted care is they're going to make sure that you're okay. They're going to offer you the availability for breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the common area. You're going to be able to go to all of the functions that they have, but you're pretty much taking care of yourself. They're going to make sure you're taking your medications, but everything else is taking care of yourself. For something of that nature, you're looking at an expense of anywhere from $3,000, maybe $2,500 to $5,000 a month. Okay, so you're looking at somewhere between $35,000 to $65,000 a year in long-term care expense. As I've mentioned many times before, this type of coverage is not part of Medicare. It is not covered under Medicare. I have a client right now, actually a friend of mine, her mother's in a long-term care facility, actually skilled nursing, and she's just not getting any better. And the insurance company comes along and says, you've got to be booted out of here, right? And she called me up, and she's all emotional, and I apologize because I sympathize with her. But if you're not getting better, then you're using your skilled nursing as a long-term care facility, which there's no coverage, and they're going to boot you out. So, self-insuring, it's definitely going to eat into your resources. If you need the full-blown care, you're looking at anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000 a month, or a month for the full-blown long-term care. That can really, really deteriorate your assets if you're going to self-insure for that.
It can get, extremely expensive. The next area I say to take a look at is veteran benefits.
Absolutely.
So, we have here in Lucas County, we've got the Lucas County Veteran Service Office. There's also what's called veteran service officers in town that can help you navigate the landscape of what's available out there for those of you who served. Of course, there's going to be asset and income limitations. But, for those of you who served in the military, thank you first and foremost for your veteran services. We're thinking about,
absolutely.
Veterans Day weekend, and we appreciate everything that we do, which is why we're so actively involved in helping save our veterans with the HOOVS organization. But if you haven't reached out to Lucas County Veteran Service Organization and become familiar with your benefits, take advantage of that. Again, know what your options are. If down the road something comes up, you know what your choices are. Number 3 is what you think of when you think of traditional long-term care insurance. So with traditional long-term care insurance, this is oftentimes the insurance that I hear about. It's like use it or lose it type of insurance. So you're traditionally paying a premium. You're selecting what type of benefits that you want, whether it's, as you pointed out, in-home care, assisted living, adult daycare, or nursing home care, what your daily or lifetime maximum benefits are, things like eliminations. The biggest challenge I would say for that is, again, going back with healthcare costs continuing to go up, it's one of those things like if you needed it, thank goodness you had that type of insurance, right?
Absolutely.
If you got into a car accident, thank goodness you had coverage.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't, then it feels like it was money out the window. You could pay year after year after year, one day just sail off into the sunset, and one might say, well, I shoulda, coulda, would have been better off had I just left that money to my kids, and they could have used that money since they didn't need long-term care. But that's what traditional long-term care insurance is.
Yeah, when you look at the numbers, and it's really, really hard to look at the numbers when you're, 40, 45, 50 years old and say, oh, like you said, they shoulda, woulda, couldas. But think about this number, okay? If you bought a traditional long-term care policy back in your mid-40s, early 50s, you could be looking at a premium of somewhere between, $2,500 and $3,000, maybe even $3,500 for a couple, right? Well, do the math on that. That's a year premium. I mentioned earlier about the monthly cost for a nursing home at $5,000. So spending $3,000 a year to save $5,000 a month, those numbers really add up, right? So that's why I think the big problem that a lot of people had, and you can attest to this, Nolan, is the traditional long-term care, like you mentioned. It's a use it or lose it. It's one of those situations where, gosh, I've paid all of this premium in here, and you go into a nursing home for a month and unfortunately pass away. You didn't even use any of the benefits, but you had that coverage there if you need it. And I think that's what has steered a lot of people away from the old traditional. But there are a lot of changes. The hybrid plans today are far different than they were back in the day.
Yeah, you were talking about earlier the fact of it's a lot cheaper if you focus on not the nursing home. So you talked about how assisted living tends to be cheaper. And I think if you ask anybody that's close to or in retirement time, their desire is always to be able to stay at home to maintain their control and independence. And so instead of always just looking at the end, meaning the most expensive nursing home aspect, maybe when you're looking at developing your care plan, first and foremost, you focus on developing your stay-at-home plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with your stay-at-home plan, there are some annuities that are out there with additional benefits for long-term care, and there's also a life leverage plan. So with annuities are products that are issued by an insurance company. And some of these annuity accounts, what they do is they offer some type of growth factor that says, hey, in 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, if you cannot perform 2 of your activities of daily living, that's the things like what we think of when we think of taking prescribed medication, getting in and out of bed or using the bathroom facilities. When you cannot perform some of these activities of daily living, what it'll do is it'll provide income. Now, with annuities, it doesn't always provide enough income if it's the full-blown nursing home expense, but it could go a long way to helping make life a little easier around the house, again, helping somebody maintain control and independence. Then that 5th category is that life leverage plan, probably one of my favorite options to take a look at for folks. And I know it's something that even my own family has, but it's something we've shown a lot of clients that are out there. What we think about is think about taking money and moving it from your left pocket to your right pocket. So it's an asset that's still in your pocket. You could have $100,000 of what I would call lazy assets.
Sure.
So money that's just kind of sitting around, very unproductive. and you want to take and try to leverage that dollar to get more benefits. You know, a 65-year-old healthy male or female, they may be able to move that money over, and then instantaneously they could get $150,000 as far as a death benefit.
Sure.
The nice thing about the life leverage plan, the plans that we usually look at is we look at plans that are usually 100% liquid up front. So if somebody wants to get their money back or have complete access to the funds, they have that liquidity feature inside of there. Secondarily, if they never need it and simply pass away, that death benefit's paid out. But it's paid out in the form of life insurance, which, if named correctly, can be paid out income tax-free, probate-free cash. The $100,000 that's sitting in the lazy assets, the question is how long is it going to take for that money to grow to be $150,000?
Sure.
Well, if you have a life leverage plan, it's instantaneous. You know, and unfortunately, after doing this for 28 years, we've had clients that have had this plan, and then they've lost somebody. And, you know, I go to the surviving spouse and I say, you know, I'm so sorry for the loss of your loved one, but here's the insurance plan that we put in place. But the third benefit that you get is you can get, you know, double or triple your benefit. So again, if somebody puts in $100,000, they might qualify for $300,000 of long-term care, critical, chronic, and terminal illness coverage. So again, based upon their own situation, whether they have a heart attack, a stroke, or an organ transplant, some type of critical illness, they can have access to their funds while they're still alive. If they have a chronic illness, again, that inability to perform some of your activities of daily living, they can again accelerate, you know, part of that $300,000. So if they put in $100,000, it's worth $300,000. The way that I look at it is they're still paying some of that expense, right? Because that $100,000 was their initial investment. Yeah. But it's leveraged into that example of $300,000. So you're paying, you know, 30 cents or 50 cents on the dollar versus paying dollar for healthcare related expenses. So the life leverage plan is a great plan when you're incorporating the stay-at-home plan. But, you know, those benefits can be used anywhere somebody wants to use them.
Well, you're absolutely right. You know, I love the concept. You know, the life leverage plan is an awesome. And you mentioned one thing, and I want to touch some numbers really, really quickly here. You mentioned the, you know, the stay-at-home plan, right? 78% of people are solely relying on family members to take care of their long-term care needs. And 90% of those family members have had to alter their work schedules or lifestyles as a result of that. One of the things that, unless you are experiencing that, you know, I remember my dad, he always would say, you are not putting me in a home. And I think there's you know, some of these homes, if you have the ability to pick and choose, like I mentioned earlier, is obviously the best option. But if you don't have that option and you're put into a home that the government is telling you where to go, that could turn out to be a very, very uncomfortable situation for anybody, right? But I will tell you this, the strain and the stress on family members to take care of their parents. We all do it because we love them dearly, and it's always, you know, we try to do the best for them, but that's not always the best, you know, because it will drain your assets, let alone cause a great deal of stress, could cause some health issues, and are you really doing what's best for your loved ones? Everybody wants to make sure they plan for at home, and I love the way you say that. You know, let's look at creating an at-home care plan for you, and life leverage plans are the way to get that done as well.
There's a lot of different strategies there when it comes to long-term care, from, you know, the self-funding to the traditional policy to some of these hybrids that Nolan and Scott just laid out there. Not saying that any of them is going to be, you know, the right answer or the wrong answer. The worst thing you could do, I think, is to say that it won't happen to me. We certainly hope that is the case, but, you know, as the guys said, you know, somewhere between 50 to 70% chance, depending on where you look, that you're going to need that form of some form of long-term care assistance. And if you don't plan for it, you become, you know, it becomes that emotional strain, that financial strain, and it's something that can be avoided with just a little bit of preparedness, you know, something to take into consideration and to figure out what's going to work best for you. The team at America's Retirement Headquarters can weigh the pros and cons to see what's going to be best down the line. To get started, just pick up the phone and give a call, 419-794-3030, or you can go online and schedule time there as well at americasretirementheadquarters.com.